All right, so the first one I'd like to talk about, we're going to talk about Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, and we'll briefly touch on Excel, but we'll end with Teams. So the two big things you can do, so if we're looking at Copilot for M365, this is an add-on to the E3 or above license. If you have Copilot for M365, the two things that its main things that it's added are the summary and drafting an email. I have found that the summary has been pretty helpful. In fact, so we have a ticketing system for our Business Central support, and inevitably on tickets there can be back and forth. And so if I've been away from my email for a while and I see something that maybe I could help on, the first thing I do is I say summarize this email, and it actually does a pretty good job of taking all of the huge, could be a huge thread, and putting in something like you might be able to see on the screen here. You can also use the draft and create an email. This one, I would say I have mixed results. Sometimes it's a good way to, write it a little bit informally and then generate it and then tweak it. So that's probably how I've used it the most on most of my emails, and I write a lot of email. I would say that I'm using that maybe 10% of the time. So I'm predominantly just doing normal email, but for certain ones that maybe you might spend a little extra time on, you might use the draft. And I'll show you another example of where you can do this that might even be more powerful in just a moment. Copilot for Word. Okay, so this one you can begin to generate documents within Word. And when you open a document, if you've got Copilot enabled, the first thing you'll see is the draft with Copilot. You can additionally highlight different areas, and you can have it rewrite that text. It doesn't ask you how you want to rewrite it, so that'd be a place where, I think we'll see improvement in the future. And generally speaking, when we think about, so we talked about the RAG technique, the retrieval technique. Word is, what we've seen, predominantly looking within the current document. So in this example, I had a number of notes for this webinar, and I asked it to generate the intro for the webinar. And the last few things in this piece was Josh's introduction. And so it took a guess at that, and it generated some pieces that I could probably use, and you probably heard me say. But you can see where there's some places where it didn't get everything right, because it didn't know everything about us and Copus and that's stored in other places. So what I've seen here, and what my theory is, that it's trained on lots and lots of templates. And so if you're beginning a document, so I began a procedure document for us internally about a month ago. That one generated a wonderful procedure document. So getting started there, that was a pretty good use. The next is PowerPoint. You can see this slide is actually generated from PowerPoint with Copilot. So I asked it to duplicate the slide. I was on the Word slide, and then asked it to put in the best ways to use Copilot. You can see it didn't take my formatting. It's a fine formatting, and there's a designer piece that you can adjust the formatting. So, the use of this is, I would say this is probably in its infancy. One thing that all of these are good at so far, the summarize piece. So if you're taking a document, we get documents from, say, Microsoft and some of our partners they can be a little meaty, and asking questions about the document, it's pretty good at that. The generation side, I think that's where, just continuing to test it, and maybe using some pieces. I think that's where we're probably still in the early phases. So we've seen some good and some bad. I would like to share where I think where it is the best. So Copilot inside Teams is in my opinion Microsoft's piece de resistance for the M365 version of Copilot. It includes so when you're in Teams and you have your chat up, so where you're chatting with any of your team members within your organization, you now have at the top a Copilot button. And now if you click that Copilot button, you're chatting with Copilot just like you would with ChatGPT. The cool thing is it's really good at accessing the Microsoft Graph. So that is Microsoft's web service access to basically all things that are in your tenant. So as an example, your email is accessible via Microsoft Graph. SharePoint documents are accessible from Microsoft Graph. So when I ask a question to Copilot in Teams, it's going and looking in all of those sources. It's doing that retrieval, that RAG that Josh talked about, and it's injecting that behind the scenes into a query and then giving me an answer. So in the examples here, I said looking for a document to describe. So when I'm asking, so you can search by keyword, right? And your normal, we all know how to search by keyword, but sometimes you don't know the specific word that you were looking for, or it's very generic, right? AI, there's only 2 letters, so it could be in lots of documents. But if I ask it about a concept, then it's going to go do that nearest neighbor, that similarity lookup, and I'll likely get answer like documents that match that, and then it's going to reference those documents in the answer. And so then I can even, if I like the answer, I can go to it. There's the way the reference is there, you can go to it. So that's really cool. It also sometimes will respond with the new loop components. Loop components might be things like where you see this copy button. So it's making it easy for you to copy that information. Let's say I asked it to draft an email. So back to the example with Outlook, I might say draft an email, and I've done this with some of our trainings, reference our core values or reference our flywheel. Those are documents that I know or concepts within documents I know exist and it can pull from. And so it will inject those into behind the scenes and then create an answer. And then sometimes what you'll see is it'll even say, instead of just copy, it might say, do you want to start this email or do you want to create this document? So it's giving you an action, allowing the human to be in the middle. We talked about the side effects earlier. So we want to choose what actions we feel like as we design these plugins. Maybe updating HubSpot, not a big deal, right? Because that's a simple, like adding a comment on a HubSpot record, low risk. But drafting an email and sending it, yeah, we want a human to be in the loop on that one. So so it does a really great job at, doing things up to the point where a human really, needs to be in the loop. The other place that it's really great is meetings. So if you use Copilot in your Teams meetings, at the end of that meeting, it will generate a recap. And that recap will talk about the meeting, talk about the follow-up. Additionally, you can query, so on the right-hand side, you can see that I not just looked at the meeting notes, but I asked it a very specific question about the summit topics that we talked about. And so it generated, and this is a pretty good list. This just about nailed every single topic that we plan to submit for Summit. And so that's been a very useful. In fact, we were a specific example of this. We were on a call with one of our clients. We had 3 people on the call, and somehow on a very specific topic, we had 2 different versions. We had 2 different answers in our notes. And so what we did was we went back to Copilot. It was an hour and a half long meeting. We had the transcription turned on. Make sure Thank you, David. You do need to turn on the transcription, and so you can even enable that automatically through your through AD, I believe. So you can you want to turn on transcription right from the beginning, and that's what it'll use to do the summary. So we asked it a question: what did our client discuss about quality? And then we had very specific answers around that topic, and we were able to correct our notes. We went back to the transcript to verify. It had the links, if you can see on the right. And so that was a really, really useful, I mean, it saved a ton of time for going through all that.